Hello and welcome back to another episode of Math with Sohn. Today we're going to be learning about some special right triangles, specifically a 45, 45, 90 special right triangle. So a special right triangle, there are only two of them. The easier one of the two is the one we're learning right now, has a right angle, and the other two angles are 45. Okay? And if both of those angles are 45, then both of these sides are the same. So instead of saying that both of those were 45, I could have given you a right triangle with two legs that are the same. Now, there is a formula and a diagram more so for these. I like to call these parts here the legs. And this is the hypotenuse. Yes, it is. But the formula would be the leg times the square root of 2. Okay? So, if we have the leg, things will be very easy. If you don't have the leg, if you were given the hypotenuse, you would want to find the leg. So your goal is always to figure out what is the leg of the triangle, because if you know that, you're done. So if you needed to find the leg, instead, if you were given the leg, or hypotenuse, you would have to take the hypotenuse and divide by the square root of 2 instead of multiply by the square root of 2. Okay? So, let's see what these look like on paper. If I have a right triangle, like so, and if these are both 45 degrees, then if I knew that this part right here, if one of the legs was 8, I could figure out every other part of this triangle, because I would know that the other leg would have to be the same. That would have to be 8. And I would also know that the hypotenuse is just the leg times the square root of 2. So this would be 8 times the square root of 2, or just 8 square root of 2. You don't have to write the times part, so you could just relate that as 8 square root of 2. All right? So when you're given the legs, super easy. No problem at all. What if you weren't giving the legs, though? Well, actually, let's just take the legs and make it a little bit more difficult. What if, instead of making the leg a nice normal number, what if we made the leg something different, like the leg is the square root of 5? Okay? No reason to panic. If the leg is the square root of 5, the other leg is going to also be the square root of 5. And here, we would have to take the square root of 5 and multiply by the square root of 2, because it's the leg times the square root of 2, so it'd be the square root of 5 times the square root of 2, which is just the square root of 10. No big deal. You would need to make sure that that doesn't simplify. If that was the square root of 20, it would have. So you need to be careful that that doesn't simplify, but in this case, it just doesn't. All right. Let's do another one. Let's say we have, instead of the leg given to us, what if we were given the hypotenuse? What if we were just given, on this 45-45 triangle, the hypotenuse, and let's say the hypotenuse is 19. Well, if you're given the hypotenuse, you have to take the leg and find the leg by taking the hypotenuse and dividing by the square root of 2. So instead of multiplying by the square root of 2, you have to divide by the square root of 2. So that means that this side here is 19 over the square root of 2. And this side here would also be 19 over the square root of 2. Now, some of your math teachers may not accept that, including myself. I would not accept that, because we're not supposed to keep the radical on the bottom of a fraction. So that's the part that maybe makes people go like, where did that come from? So what we have here is the square root is on the bottom of the fraction. You have to take the 19 radical 2. And in order to get it off of the bottom of the fraction, we will have to multiply by 1, but a very special version of 1 called square root of 2 over square root of 2. You just multiply by whatever's on the bottom. That would give you 19 square root of 2 on the top, but it would be the square root of 4 on the bottom. And the square root of 4 is 2. So we get 19 square root of 2 over 2. A lot of times, 19 will divide by 2, but in this case it doesn't. If it were 18, we would in fact divide that by 2. All right, so let's try a few more, make sure we're comfortable with it. Let's say on this next one we have also a 45-45 triangle. And let's say that here, this is the square root of 6. In order to find the legs on this 90-degree triangle, I would have to take the square root of 6 and divide by the square root of 2, because it is the hypotenuse divided by the square root of 2 is equal to the leg. Well, in this case, we get lucky because square root of 6 divided by the square root of 2 is able to divide because they're both underneath the square root. So these would just be square root of 3. There's not a radical on the bottom because the bottom divided off. So we don't have to go any further. One more. Let's make this one slightly different way of viewing it. So what if we were told that this part right here is 10? Then I would need to find the legs. Well, the legs are going to be the hypotenuse, again, divided by the square root of 2, which means we have 10 divided by the square root of 2. And again, we can't keep that on the bottom of the fraction. We got to get rid of that radical by multiplying by the square root of 2 and the square root of 2, which gives us 10 square root of 2 over square root of 4. But the square root of 4, just like last time, is 2. In this case, 10 over 2 does divide. We end up with 5 square root of 2. So that means that one leg, this leg right here, is 5 square root of 2 simplified, and we can fill those both in. All right. That's going to do it for this episode. Until next time, stay positive and make sure you look at the next one, which is going to be the 30, 60, 90 special right triangles, which are sometimes viewed as a little bit harder. See ya. Bye.